Hello, thank you for checking out A1 Math, and today we're looking at graphing exponential functions. And what we want to be able to do is make a table, organize and make a table for our exponential function. We want to be able to graph it from that table and determine some of the parts of that graph, okay? So the first thing we want to do is graph it. Here's the function here. Right here, and I'm going to come back and explain some of the parts we need, okay? Now, we got f of x, which is equal to 2x, and it's just a regular exponential function because we have the variable as the exponent, okay? This is x and f of x, which is similar to y, and what we want to do is plug in these values for our variable or the exponent and see what we get. So over here on the calculator, I've already typed them in. You'll see how you have 2 to the negative 2 is 0.25, 2 to the negative 1 is 0.5, 2 to the 0 is 1, then 2 to 1 is 2, and 2 squared is 4. So I'm going to write those values in. So 0.25, 0.5, 1, and 2, and 4. All right, so as you notice, you got 0.25 there, and that's similar as 1/4. 1/4. So you can write 1/4 instead of 0.25 here. So I'm going to go ahead and write that out here, 1/4, either way. And 0.5 is the same as 1/2. You can always hit math and fraction enter to get these numbers here as well on your graphing calculator. Now, the reason I make that point, it depends on how you read these numbers, whichever is easier for you to graph, since that's the mission, is to graph it. All right, so I start with my regular x and y here, or x of f of x, and my x goes left to right, and the f of x goes up and down. And I'm going to go left, negative 2, and up 1/4. Either 0.25, like 25 cents, or 1/4 of the square. It should be really small here. Yeah, that's hard to do that. But next we got negative 1, which is 0.5, which is a little bit higher than the previous one. Raise this up so you can see it. All right. And let me make sure I put this in the right spot here. This is going to be negative 1 right here. Next we'll go to 0 and 1. Then over 1 and up 2. Then over 2 and up 4. So I just plot these points just like regular coordinates. Negative 2, 0.25, negative 1, 0.5, 0, 1, so on. Now I'm going to draw my line like so. And that's my exponential function. Okay? Now, excuse me. Once this is done, we want to determine some of the parts of this exponential function. And the parts we want to know is the x-intercept, the y-intercept, the asymptote, the domain, and the range. Okay? Now, x and y-intercept should be, you may be familiar with. Intercept is kind of like intersection. And what you're saying is, where does the line intersect with the x-axis, and where does it intersect at the y-axis? Well, you could take a look at the graph and determine that as well. So here you can see where the line crosses the y-axis, and this point here will be your y-intercept. And you can also see that it never touches the x-axis. So since it never touches the x-axis, then it never intercepts with it. So first, we're going to put none for x-intercept because it never touches. Now, y-intercept, you can see that it's 0, 1, but sometimes that's hard to read. So what you could do is go back up to your table and look and see where x is 0. Wherever x is 0, y, or f of x, is going to be your y-intercept. So that's going to be my point. 0, 1. So that 0, 1 is my y-intercept. Now, let's talk about asymptote. Now, asymptote is based on the graph, and you get that with different functions, where your line is going really, really, really close to a line, but never touches it. And what the asymptote is asking is, okay, that line that's never touching, what is the equation for it? What is the linear equation for that line? Well, this line right here is going to be y equals 0. So the x-axis, another way of saying the x-axis is y is equal to 0, because everywhere on this line, y will be 0. 0, 0, -1, 0, -2, 0, -3, 0. So y equals 0 is the name of this x-axis line. So that's what we're going to write for our asymptote. Y is equal to 0. Okay, now we just got two more parts we need to name here. One is domain, and the other is range. And those could be kind of hard to remember what goes what with what, okay? Domain is going to talk about all the x values and how far does the x values reach. Range is going to talk about all the y values. And the way to figure that out, or remember which one is which, there's a little trick. And you could do alphabetical order. So with your x-intercept and y, or just x and y, we know that x comes before y in the alphabet. Well, since D comes before R in the alphabet, that's a little trick to let you know D is going to talk about the x values, and R is going to talk about the y values. So let's talk about those values real quick. If we come back up to our graph, we can see that if we go all the way down this way as far as we can for x, that line is going to keep going. And if we go this way, it's going to keep going up, but it's going to keep going out, farther and farther out, okay? So it's going to go for infinity this way and infinity this way, okay? So it's two ways to say this. You could say that the domain, which is all the x values, is going to include all real numbers. And another way you could put it is put it in something called parentheses, where you're representing the lowest x value and the highest x value from left to right. So the lowest x value is negative infinity. And the highest x value is positive infinity. All right, now that's all the x values going from left to right. Now we're going to talk about the y values going up and down. Okay, well, if you start with the lowest y value, it never goes below 0. So y would have to be greater than 0, okay? And it goes up forever. So it wouldn't be all the real numbers. It'll be y is greater than 0. Okay? Now, if we do it with our parentheses notation, we'll start with the lowest y value. And the lowest y value will be 0. And then the highest y value will be positive infinity. Okay? And those are two ways to indicate the notation to let you know about the domain and range. All right, so just to recap here, we were graphing exponential functions. The first thing we did is plug in these values so we can have our f of x over here. Next thing we did is take those coordinates and plot them out and draw a graph. And finally, we named the parts of that graph. The x-intercept, which there was none. The y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis. The asymptote, the line that it's getting close to. The domain, which includes all the x values. And the range, which includes all the y values. Okay? And again, I want to thank you for checking out A1 Math, and have a nice day.